Thank you so much for enrolling in this course. This course is a series of Zoom recordings from an entrepreneurial finance class I teach to MBA students at a university in Spokane, Washington. I've edited out any video that shows students and the discussion questions I have with students after each section. This class was a weekend, one credit intensive class. Those classes were built to be overviews of topics. In this course, I'll be giving you an overview of a broad variety of financial topics that are important to entrepreneurs and small business owners. The beginning video may be a bit conceptual for you number crunching fans out there, but I want to impress on my students that small businesses serve many goals of an owner, one of which is the classic financial utility maximization taught in traditional economics classes, which underpins so much financial reporting. However, my job as the CFO of small companies included serving other values of owners and stakeholders. This is one area where small companies differ significantly than the financial priorities of many larger companies dominated by non owner investors. I have a short lesson on why people start businesses, and then there is a great guest speaker who talks about small business banking. My students take my Managing Cash Flow course before the weekend intensive, so you may want to take that course before watching the guest speaker, my quick overview of sources of cash, or the cash flow management lesson. I then walk through the financial aspects of a business plan and strategic planning. Once again, these are overviews. I talk about cash flow management and important financial metrics. The last part of the course highlights financial aspects of some specific business situations like pricing, growth, risk management, and exit planning. You number crunchers will like some of these lessons and examples. I hope this course allows you to be a better accountant or finance staff for a small business, or I hope it allows you to better work with your small business clients. I hope you enjoy the course. I want to start with the story of a mining company. It took years from when they first staked their claim till they finally broke big. And it took massive amounts of commitment, massive amount of costs. They had some small cash flow along the way. And there's always these glimmers of hope when you're an entrepreneur of should I go here? Should I go there? And there were small veins they'd chase and they'd run off. In fact, the original mine shaft they dug, they gave up on, and they started digging a second mine shaft. And that second mine shaft is actually the one where they struck it huge. In fact, they got the mother lode of the Hercules mine. And so this Hercules mine had the greatest ore that ever came out of the Silver Valley. And also, too, I mean, these were guys that were literally in the hole digging manually with pickaxes on and on for years before things happen. And then suddenly they're business owners of an incredibly profitable business. So that changed their roles as owners and the structure of the business. And suddenly everything changed once they hit the mother lode. These guys, I mean, really this crew here, they were the lucky ones. But they were the persistent ones. There were hundreds or thousands in the valley that didn't work as hard and didn't strike gold, but there were lots of them that worked as hard or harder and they didn't strike gold either. So I guess at the beginning here, we're going to talk a lot about what's the purpose of a small business and what's going to keep the fire going for you. How are you going to survive as an entrepreneur? And the first thing I'm going to say is don't be surprised at how difficult it is at the start to start a small business. And it's going to take more commitment and time and money than you ever expect. And so when we get into cash flows and all sorts of things, that's going to be kind of a lens you have to look at is it's just tougher than you ever think too. And so what this course is this course is going to walk you through how to prepare for all that and survive until you reach that mother lode, if that's where you're heading of a big company or the exit strategy. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying the person who began to build wasn't able to finish. And so that gets into that same thing of there's all this excitement and all these great things about entrepreneurship and starting a company, everything like that. But even it sneaks into this parable here of you first got to count the cost, and the cost is financial, and the cost is time, and the cost is commitment. How much energy are you willing to commit to this thing here? That's what this next slide's about is, are you willing to pay the cost? If the reward's high enough, that'll drive your commitment. It'll justify the investments and the costs and the sacrifices you make, and it's going to give you hope in the hard times. So these are the big questions you start with. And they really matter. As I get into this a little bit more, I'm going to explain why they matter so much. And ironically, why a CFO of a company cares so much about these questions. because it drives so much of how I would manage the finances of organizations. So the big questions: what is your ultimate goal personally or as part of the community? How will a business help you achieve that? I mean, why do you need a business to do this versus something else? And how do you build a business that's effective at achieving that? So once you say, oh yeah, business is the right route to go, how do you build an effective business that does exactly what you want it to achieve? So we're going to focus on the financial aspects of how to do that. Many of your other classes focused on business and it was on finances and stuff. But in a way, this class is going to be different, or at least the prism or the perspective we're going to start with is going to be totally different. And I want you to focus on the owner and how the business helps them achieve their goals, because the business is just a means to an end of achieving the owner's goals. A business to survive has to create value for others, though. So for an owner to get what they value, they have to give value to their customers and their owners. So when I say, oh, it's all about what the owners want and everything, the only way the owners get value is when they give value to others. And I've got a whole other course about that on my website. We're not going to go down that tangent. I want to give that caveat. Sometimes I think when I start with, oh, it's all about the owners, it's like, well, what about the customers? What about this? What about that? And it's like, yeah, but the only reason the business existed in the first place to serve those customers is because that owner needed something from the company, and they're doing an exchange by building this company to give service to others so that others give them the value they're looking for. And so that's why the company exists in the first place, because or the purpose of any business starts with the purpose of your life. Now that sets the direction if you get lost. But let me talk about how this may seem really fluffy at the beginning. It's like, wow, did I join the wrong class or what? Here's some practical examples. These are the questions we're going to be sorting through now, because it really gets to brass tacks. Are you building this business to own it or to maximize its value for sale? When we talk about entrepreneurs in particular, and there are small business owners that their life is their business. Maybe the most extreme example I know of is all you out there who talked about ag and farmers. When I worked at Fairfield and the farmers there, and I mean, my grandpa came from Kansas in the Dust Bowl, and then they were farmers in the Bonners Ferry area where, life and community and the farm and family is all fit together. That's totally different than when I'm in Seattle and there's all these people starting companies and they're just there to crank this baby up and show that it's got promise and then sell. I mean, those are very, very different business models. And what are you building? What do you want to build as an entrepreneur or small business owner? Do you want to maximize the earnings, or do you really want time and cash outside the business? How much cash are you willing to reinvest in the business for growth? Or how much do you want to just bleed out of the company and finance your lifestyle? Or do you want a business because you're tired of being strapped to 9 to 5 and you want freedom and flexibility of time and things like that? Do you want total control, or do you want partners? This is sometimes one of the biggest things. We're going to get into this in venture capital. My dad started his own business. He started with 3 partners. Eventually, he just bought everyone out. It was really messy. There was all sorts of awful things that happened. Other times, some of the most successful business in the world where 2 really smart people start something, or a small group of people start something, and then they bring on venture capital and thing goes public. They're just a smaller owner at that point, but they became incredibly wealthy through the process. When I started this class a couple of years ago, it was a guy I'd worked for before, actually. He started his own company 20 years ago, and he recently retired from it. And he was fine just to let the company wind down when he walked away. His wife's like, you can't do that. I mean, we built this business and it's got all this value. And so they actually kept it going. They sold part of the ownership to a next generation, and the business still goes on today. So some of my other experiences as CFO of companies and the questions we had to answer, like when I worked with family-owned banks, how much cash do we keep in the company for growth? How much do the owners need for their lifestyle? And particularly when the owners get older, or a generation of the owners get older, and then is there another generation that's going to take over the business? Is there enough cash flow to finance the retirement of the older generation? Sometimes companies have to sell because it just doesn't create enough cash flow for that older generation, and there's no other generation to take over the business in the family. And so they decide they let go of it, even though it's been a family business for decades, and just take the cash, and everything changes. And then everything changes for the employees too when that happens. I've talked about how much control for the main owner. Do they delegate operations? Do they make the investment to hire good managers? Or do they just want to control it themselves and be the owner and run the company and have complete control? Or do they bring in outside investors? So those are some of the examples of things when I work, especially with family banks, things like that. One of the tools I use to start this big discussion of what in the world do you want out of your company, like the big questions. When you in finance classes, it's all about like traditional economics and it's all about maximization of dollars and things like that. But when you start talking about entrepreneurs and small businesses and family businesses and all that, the purpose of the business could be all sorts of things. And so, what are those things? And how does the business's cash flow? I mean, it doesn't just, it's not all like, butterflies, rainbows, and that's all they want. I mean, ultimately, the business is a financial enterprise that allows them to get value, or at least the money to get the whatever they want to get with that money that they value. Some exercises to start. The primary aim. Let's say you recorded your life story and you played it in your memorial service. What do you want that story to say? And so that's one way to think through it is really kind of what's the big story? How do you want this story to end up for you? Life aspirations. What do you hope others would say about you at the memorial service? Trying to gain it from another perspective, and particularly for people who are really big on their place in the community or things like that. Another one on life aspirations, number 2, is pretend that you can be granted anything you wish. Why do you want this? And what desire it will satisfy? And I used to have like this picture of a person with this lamp, like a genie sort of concept of you can get anything you want. It's so funny. I heard a joke the other day, and there were 3 guys stuck on a deserted island. Each of them gets a wish. This genie comes to, hey, you can have a wish. And the first guy's like, I just want to be back with my family, So boom, he's back with his family. And then the other person, he's like, I just really want to be back where I used to love to hike and hang out and this beautiful place I came from. Boom, that person's gone back where they belong. The other guy's like, I'm kind of lonely. I kind of want my friends back. So be careful what you wish for. So your dream company exercise from CFO perspective, that's an exercise I use with people to kind of just start to work on the qualitative aspect of this, because and we're going to get into this in strategic planning, so it's a little ways down the road, but believe me, this actually leads to something practical. Is the more I understand the purpose of the business, the more you understand the purpose of the business and exactly what you want, you can customize the business, its structure, its employees, its cash flows, exactly what you're looking for. Those life aspirations usually boil down to 3 things: what you want to be, to do, or to have. The webinars I did for Numerica was called Couples with Companies. The name is co-preneurs. Life partners who are in business together are co-preneurs. And so I talked about some of the unique things about co-preneurs and arguments that happen with co-preneurs and working through that. And a lot of that was understanding what each other's real goals were for the business and communicating about that. Because a lot of times the disagreements are on tactics, go all the way back to the assumptions, the aspirations, the purpose of really what do you want to get out of this business. The way it all fits together is the personal aspiration is I want to be, to do, to have. And so the company purpose that rolls out of that is to achieve that. My company will. Once again, the company is not its own entity. It doesn't like just create itself. It's birthed. It's created by someone else. And that purpose, its whole reason for being, it not only its reason for existence, but its reason for continuing existence and purpose comes from those aspirations of the owners.